Hey, I'm back with the RadRover. I wanted to do a 100-mile plus review. I did an initial review unboxing. Really didn't know the bike too well, but now I feel a little more comfortable with it. I've done a few add-ons. So I actually have 126 miles on it now. So let's get into it. The first thing I have to say about RadRover is the customer service. I did call them on a couple different occasions, ask questions, and they were great. Answered the phone, answered all the questions. I had one problem with the bike, which I didn't really notice when I unboxed it, but after riding it, I had a tick, tick, tick kind of sound. Turned out the front disc brake must have got bumped during shipping, and it was slightly bent. Not real bad, but enough to kind of be annoying. Well, they shipped me a brand new one out right away. Got here in a couple days, and I put it on. It was very easy to replace. While we're talking about brakes, that is one of my issues with the bike. They seem to squeak a little bit. Now, that was one of the phone calls I made to their customer service, and they said for this bike, a typical break-in period is 50 to 100 miles. And I guess you could say it's improved a little bit, but they do squeak when I apply the brakes, both front and back. I've tried to adjust it a little bit, and it's improved. Now, in fairness, I only have 126 miles on it, so I hope that the braking, the squeakiness improves. Since we're talking about the negatives first, I'll move on to the chain. The chain itself is fine. This is nice. This is all metal now, and they have a back guard on here so the chain doesn't flip off. I read that was a problem in earlier versions. The issue I have, and it's not a big issue again, but boy, does this thing slap when you go over rough trails or rocks. This thing really makes a racket. I don't know if that's normal or not. I could see they put some padding on here to kind of prevent the paint from chipping and the noise. But if anybody has any ideas of how to quiet this up, maybe there's some kind of a bracket that goes around here and holds the chain from slapping the metal bars. I don't know. If you know or have any suggestions, please leave that in the comment for me. I'd love to know how to kind of resolve that, but it is a little annoying when you're going over bumps and this thing is slap happy. All right, this is really my last complaint, and believe it or not, this one is probably the most frustrating of the whole bike, and it's probably the simplest to fix. But this outlet here where you plug in the charger is the biggest pain. I can't tell you, it's so frustrating. They practically need a video tutorial of how to put this back in. You can sit here and you can push it different ways and try and get it back in, and it's just impossible. You can get it in halfway sometimes, which is pretty much how I do it. Kind of tempted to just rip it off, but driving in rain probably wouldn't be a good idea at that point. But in any case, there we go. It's in, kind of. But in any case, that thing is a real pain. Don't have a real good solution for that. So if you know of a good solution, again, leave it in the comments. I'm definitely open to suggestions. While we're on the topic of the battery, one thing I didn't even know for the longest time about this battery was it has a battery indicator light. I had read about it, but I didn't think this one had it. It's all black. It's kind of hard to notice, but it's there. It's on the other side of where you lock it and power it on and off. So you can turn the battery on and check the indicator. Pretty handy. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the cords. The cords are okay for the most part. They're wrapped a little tight. Embarrassingly enough, I had a minor accident. I was going up a hill. I stopped mid-hill, and I tried to back up. Dumb mistake. Anyway, long story short, I fell off, and the handlebars twisted far enough to where it put a lot of pressure on this cord that travels through the lower tube. Well, unfortunately, the connection is in the tube. So this wire comes down, has a connection here to another wire that I believe goes up to the controller. And of course I can't fix it inside the tube, so all of this had to be disconnected to get enough slack. I had to bring this cord all the way out, the bottom cord all the way out, and connect them outside the tube to get back, if I wanted the battery power anyway. And then at home, I had to loosen all this up, get some extra slack, long enough to get this cord all the way through the tube and out. I could only get it out the bottom hole, maybe an inch. I mean, it was not sticking out very far. And then of course I plugged them in and then fed it back in here and reconnected all the wire ties. But that's not necessarily a bad thing about the bike. It was just kind of a pain that there's a connection inside of the tube. But again, it was pretty easy to fix, just some wire ties. So different components of the bike. The headlight, it's okay. I don't do a lot of night riding, so it's not a big deal, but it is nice if it's getting dark, you know, dusk or sunset, put a headlight on just so cars can see you. It's not very bright, but there's a lot of aftermarket options, so that's a good thing. But in all honesty, this is good enough for me. So some of the optional things that I've done to the bike. I've added a water bottle holder on the right top part of the frame. They give you mounting screws here. They give you an option to mount on the left side. And they also give you an option to mount underneath, which is nice. So let's talk about the seat. I know I mentioned this in my first video, and this is the seat that comes with it. The color does go great with the hand grips. And it does say plush on it, but it is not plush. This is not a fun seat to sit on for a long distance. So I did upgrade the seat to an aftermarket one, and I wanted to make sure it was one that would not absorb water if it did get wet. So far this seat has been great. Now I know in my first video I mentioned the kickstand and how they positioned it towards the rear so you can back the bike up and the pedals won't hit it as it's backing up. That is a great thing. But another great thing I have to mention about it is the wide base. This kickstand has a really wide base. A lot of bikes have just a little post like that. Well, if you're on soft ground or on a trail, that post digs in and your bike tips over, etc. This wide base on the kickstand prevents that for the most part and is really nice on softer ground. One of my favorite upgrades is this rack system in the back. Now RadPowerBikes has a rack system you could order off their website. This is a, I guess you pronounce it Topeak, T-O-P-E-A-K, and I forget what website I got it off of, but it's pretty wide. You can hang things off the side if you wanted to, and the bag system I got goes on top. So the rail system I got, the rack, again, it's made by Topeak or Topeak, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and the bag is very durable. They have different options for the bag and different options for the rack, different sizes. Some of them have side bags, etc. But the rail system is what really makes this nice. You just slide it on, it locks into place. I'll show you here the locking system. You have to push this button to unlock it. So it actually really is a superb system as far as keeping it on the bike. It doesn't bounce around or anything like that. So this is a great little system to have if you take a lunch or, you know, a hammock or something like that along with you on your ride. So overall, I'm really happy with the bike. I think RadPowerBikes makes a great product. The RadRover in particular is fantastic. The minor frustrations that I've had with it, I've either corrected or they've helped me out over the phone. Like I said, they sent me a new front disc brake and that fixed that issue. So overall, this bike gets an A for me. If you guys have one, or have any suggestions for me, please leave those in the comments. I'd love to learn more about what I can do and different options that are available. But again, overall, I'm very happy with it. 126 miles in.